I come to this work as a survivor, first and foremost, of childhood trauma through adulthood trauma. And I went into community organizing work with the hopes of being of service. And alongside that, I realized I had a lot of healing to do still. So I kind of had to go back and start finding tools and practices that felt supportive to me. And a lot of times when I was in different healing spaces or training spaces, individual and collective healing were really separate. And healing work was really depoliticized. And so I also come to the work as a queer person, and my community of people around me, both professionally and personally, are queer and trans and BIPOC and people in the disability community and trauma survivors. So I wanted to be able to be doing work that felt connected to that work, connected to liberatory and justice work. And we're also here to write. So for me, I'm a writer, and writing for me, a lot of my writing throughout my life has been about trying to untangle the somatic imprint of the trauma that I've experienced in my life. So a lot of it, I feel, has been very body-based. And when I first started trying to dive back into writing, I had a pretty strained relationship with my body. I had a pretty strained relationship with my breath. So I was trying to use words to just kind of step down into myself a little bit, and it was really hard. And for me, having some sort of meditative practice to help pair with a creative practice really has been supportive, because it helps me get out of my own way a little bit.
Everybody knows I keep thousands of journals. But I tried to retrace my steps. It was interesting, the first breathing and then the faster breathing, and then I'd fall back into the slower breathing. I have a slow heart rate anyway, so I've done that before with the faster breathing. I really like it, but there's a limit on mine. So that's a really nice thing when I'm working with somebody with this kind of similar kind of a practice, that I know, that I have limits, and I'm transparent about that. But there was a point, I don't know if you can see it, some of it got to be a flat line where I really zoned out. It was really interesting. And I thought, wow, that's interesting. I came back to life at some point. I might have heard you breathing or something else was going on. It was fun.
Thank you so much, Jennifer, for sharing this practice with us. I'm not much of a writer. But I was guided to grab a notepad, and to just open it up. And I just started drawing.
Ooh.
Yeah, and I was just drawing one section at a time. And then I got to the very end and I realized it was becoming an owl.
Brings back to reading that opening statement that you wrote about, your perspective and your values, and kind of, it rings to me of the mission. But boy, breath is a right. And to think about over the last 18 months, we're not kind of in the high point of it right now. We're in more of a plateau. But, the death of George Floyd and the, not being able to breathe was the topic. That became such a symbol, but just this, human right to be able to breathe, right? And, at some point we all don't breathe. I mean, that's the way of the cycle again of life and death. But I think I'm glad that you wrote that statement, because it really heightened for me that whole idea of the social justice issues.